Worry over loose nukes. The latest leaked cables show US and UK diplomats fretting that Pakistan's nuclear material could fall into terrorists' hands. It is technically a leak, but right now it feels more like a flood that is coming out of the website WikiLeaks. The latest batch of confidential cables spells out the frightening risk of nuclear terrorism in Pakistan. In correspondence from the last 2 years, Britain, the US and Russia have all expressed deep concern that Islamic militants could steal enough nuclear material from Pakistan's facilities to construct and detonate a crude nuclear weapon. The BBC security correspondent Frank Gardner has the story.
It's now official. The state of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal is worrying the West. Secret cables released tonight by WikiLeaks reveal a catalogue of fears. The UK has deep concerns, said a senior British diplomat, about the safety and security of Pakistan's nuclear weapons. Despite safeguards at Pakistan's nuclear sites, classified US cables reveal fears of a nuclear confrontation between Pakistan and India. Others warn of nuclear terrorism. Our major concern, wrote the US ambassador to Islamabad, is that someone working in a facility could gradually smuggle enough material out to eventually make a weapon. Again and again, the cables refer to deteriorating security in Pakistan. There's mention of an attack by extremists on a bus carrying nuclear workers. A Russian official told the US that 120,000 people are directly involved in Pakistan's nuclear and missile programs. There is no way, he said, to guarantee that they are all 100% loyal and reliable. Concerns over the security of Pakistan's nuclear materials are not new, but the language used in these confidential diplomatic cables gives us the clearest picture yet of what Western governments really fear: Al-Qaeda or its affiliates getting their hands on enough material from Pakistan to build themselves a crude nuclear device.
No nuclear material has been stolen, but certainly it has been offered by some scientists on the black market. In the past, there were individuals that were even met with Al-Qaeda's leadership to talk about exchanging nuclear material. And of course, the concern is that if that material ends up in the wrong hands, the consequences of that are enormous.
This will all be deeply unwelcome in Pakistan, where many accuse the West already of deliberately scaremongering so it can try to seize the country's strategic weapons. The Karachi-based Islamist newspaper Ummat calls the recent revelations a vindication of fears about US intentions in Pakistan, while the popular Urdu paper Jang advises the US to keep its diplomacy within legal and moral limits instead of voicing regrets and excuses. But this latest batch of secret documents proves that Western concerns over Pakistan's nuclear weapons run far deeper than governments had revealed in language never meant to be made public. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Well, for more on what's emerging in all of these cables and the potential fallout, I spoke a brief time ago with the BBC's diplomatic correspondent Bridget Kendall from London. Bridget, we've known, of course, for a long time that Western countries were concerned about what might happen to Pakistan's nuclear material. So what was there in these WikiLeaks cables that struck you as particularly new?
Well, it's true that we have known about these concerns, that they've always been rather vague and accompanied by reassurances that we should know that everything was in the hands of the Pakistan military and it would all be fine. And what we found out from these cables was that behind those reassurances there is genuine alarm and quite a lot of specific incidents that are increasing that alarm, and particularly worries that as the situation in Pakistan deteriorates, more bombs, more attacks, the Americans in particular are looking closely at whether militants, terrorists could be getting closer access to these facilities. They seem to have two worries. On the one hand, it's whether they could attack, for example, the site or nuclear workers. There's reports of workers being attacked on a bus who work at the site. but also, perhaps more tellingly, they're concerned about infiltration, that there are so many thousands of people who have access that not all of them can have been properly vetted, and that maybe there could be people who could smuggle material out and not so much steal a bomb, but steal bits which could then make a bomb. And it fits a pattern with these WikiLeaks cables, that quite a lot of it is minute detail and some of it is quite vague, but perhaps the most important thing is almost the emotional content, the sense you get of what it is that the United States and its allies are really worried about, where they're probing, where they're mulling and trying to get all the information they can, and sometimes don't have very good information.
Well, you sat down with the American ambassador to London today. A little bit of embarrassment there at the embassy, perhaps?
Well, yes, the US Embassy has been very much in the spotlight in Britain this evening, with new cables being released, new information about opinions that the US Embassy sent back to Washington about the current Prime Minister David Cameron and his Chancellor George Osborne when they were in opposition before the election, and some quite scathing comments. We've seen earlier in the week pen portraits rather unflattering of other world leaders. Well, now the British leaders are coming in for the same treatment. So yes, the US ambassador did admit that some of these leaks had been embarrassing, but he was very firm. He wasn't going to discuss specific cables or private conversations. It was all illegal, he said, and he wouldn't discuss that. He didn't deny the fact that he has been to Downing Street to discuss matters with the Prime Minister, though he wouldn't confirm that he'd actually gone along to warn them what was coming out.
Bridget Kendall in London would be fascinated to be a fly on the wall of those conversations. Thanks very much, Bridget. Now to the latest document dump by the website WikiLeaks. All week the site has parcelled out confidential US cables, and tonight's batch reveals fears about links between the Russian government and organised crime. In one document, US diplomats in Madrid even recorded a top Spanish judge with experience in organised crime cases describing Russia as a virtual mafia state. Our diplomatic correspondent Bridget Kendall has all the details.
Latest revelations from the WikiLeaks cables, and this time it's about how far organised crime might have penetrated into the Kremlin in Russia, the world's biggest country and Europe's major energy supplier. The candid assessment by Spanish judge and mafia expert José Grinda González is quoted in a cable from the US Embassy in Madrid, released by The Guardian tonight. The judge claims that Russia has become a virtual mafia state, so that one can't differentiate between the activities of the government and organised crime groups. And the strategy is to use OC, or organised crime groups, to do whatever the government can't acceptably do as a government. The judge cites, without elaborating, the mysterious case of the Russian cargo ship Arctic Sea, which went astray last year, as a clear example of arms trafficking, an allegation Russia has always fiercely rejected. And he describes as accurate the thesis of the poisoned spy Alexander Litvinenko of links between Russian intelligence and the mafia. But to the key question, the judge reportedly has no answer: the extent to which Russian Prime Minister Putin is implicated in the Russian mafia and whether he controls them. Mr. Putin himself has been clear of his verdict so far on WikiLeaks: slander. No doubt these latest allegations will reinforce that. In an American TV interview released tonight, Mr. Putin even floated the suggestion of conspiracy.
Some experts believe that somebody is deceiving WikiLeaks, their reputation being undermined, to use them for their own political purposes later on. That's one of the possibilities there, and that's the opinion of the experts.
There are plenty of rumours about the Russian state and organised crime. It's another thing to prove it, and these cables don't do that. But what is interesting here is that we're eavesdropping on the views of a Spanish mafia-busting judge and glimpsing the intense interest of the American government on this subject. A sensitive issue that will place new strains on their relationship, and that neither the Americans nor Russians will be happy about being exposed in this way. Bridget Kendall, BBC News.
And last night we told you about the fears expressed in those documents that nuclear material in Pakistan could fall into the wrong hands. But there's more. There were also charges in those leaked cables that this key US ally is covertly sponsoring militant groups that oppose America. From Pakistan, the BBC's Ali Maqbool has been following the reaction.
The tribal areas of northwest Pakistan are where Islamabad says it's helping fight Washington's enemies. But the latest leaks show concerns it's actually supporting them. In one document, the former US ambassador in Islamabad, Ann Patterson, says 4 major militant groups are being sponsored by Pakistan, including the Afghan Taliban. America currently gives Pakistan billions of dollars in aid, but Ambassador Patterson says that won't make Islamabad cut its ties with the militants. Another embarrassing revelation is a memo from the Pakistani Prime Minister, quoted as saying he didn't object to American drone attacks against militants, contrary to what he and other officials say in public. "I don't care if they do it, as long as they get the right people. We'll protest in the National Assembly, then ignore it." And then there's Pakistan's nuclear program. Last year, a senior British diplomat reported to have said the UK has deep concerns about the safety and security of Pakistan's weapons. Some months earlier, the American ambassador said, "Our major concern is that someone working in the facility could eventually smuggle enough material out to make a weapon." The official Pakistani response to the latest release of secret documents has been fury. The government's described the West's fears of nuclear material falling into the wrong hands as condescending and in line with an anti-Pakistan bias. The reaction on the street is also one of disappointment.
I think it's a big drama that Uncle Sam is playing with the whole world and with the Muslim world especially.
I mean, we are very much disappointed because what they actually think about our country and the way they are doing the business here. So we didn't think that because we consider ourselves to be a very close allies of Americans.
Well, some senior military figures here have said these leaks are just a convenient way to put pressure on Pakistan with a view to one day taking away its nuclear weapons. But there will be many observers around the world who simply feel the concerns they already had about this country have just been confirmed in black and white. Ali Maqbool, BBC News, Islamabad.
The fallout from WikiLeaks. Today, the US State Department announced that Secretary Hillary Clinton will be holding talks next week with her counterparts from Japan and South Korea. The news comes 2 weeks after Pyongyang shelled a South Korean island, killing 4 people, and despite calls from China to have an emergency resumption of broader discussions, including the North. American journalism is in grave peril. Well, we've heard that refrain before from commentators and academics, but now the warning comes from a top official charged with regulating the press. In a speech tomorrow at Columbia University, Federal Communications Commissioner Michael Copps will argue that media consolidation has damaged democracy, and he'll offer a plan to reverse the trend. Commissioner Copps visited our studio this afternoon. Commissioner, you describe American journalism as in what you call its hour of grave peril. That's a pretty serious condemnation.
It's a pretty serious situation that we're in. I think American media has a bad case of substance abuse right now.